Okay, we start here, and we're in the land of the very small. I'm actually controlling this little guy around here. This is basically cellular scale. We have like some fluid dynamics. This basically is a very analog fluid version of Pac-Man. So basically, I'm trying to eat these little dots. These little bad things chase me. Certain ones, like these guys, can kill me too. Ah, that's bad. I have certain abilities in this world, but this world is pretty much entirely procedurally generated. Now, the abilities I get from this guy, after I eat enough little of these food pellets, I get to lay an egg. So that little yellow thing is my egg. I now actually get to go to the next generation of the guy. I can click on the egg and go into an editor. If we could bring the lights down just a little bit, if that's possible. So here's a little editor. I have very simple parts that I can kind of build for this guy. I have mouthpieces that influence what I can eat. I can either eat filter food, or I have a proboscis I can poke into things. I have different movement methods: flagella, cilia, little jet, and weapons like need assists, spikes, whatever. So I'm going to take a little spike here, put it on the front of the guy, and then go back into the game. And I've actually modified this guy's abilities now. So whereas those brown things used to kill him, now he can go in and attack them. Now, I still can't go after the brown guys, but now I have a new food source. Now, I can change my movement and get faster. I can get stronger. So basically, the character that I'm controlling here is something that I've designed in the editor. So this is a bit later in the game. We've actually gone now from a 2D to a 3D environment. And now, rather than living in a little drop of water, we're living kind of under the ocean. Now, this entire world you see here is procedurally generated. And especially the guy, which I've created as a player. When I say procedural, I also kind of include player creating things, being very malleable in a procedural way. So for instance, the player creates his character, but the animations, behaviors, textures are all generated procedurally. Now this guy has a life cycle, very much like the little cell guy did. He also competes with other creatures in the environment. Now, this is the editor for this guy. You can see he's kind of made out of parts. The editor here is roughly a mixture of kind of Mr. Potato Head, Erector Set, and clay. I can grab the parts and manipulate them. I can even kind of pull them off, morph them. So I'll pull that off. I can grab the spine here, manipulate it. You see there's an underlying skeleton here, which gives me some clue as to kind of the internal structure of the guy. And like clay, I can roll the mouse wheel and actually sculpt him smoothly to give him his outer form. Now, these things are built out of functional parts that actually have meaning to the guy in terms of how he's going to behave and live in this world. These parts also are mutable. So let's pull off his tail here. The part categories come in functional divisions. So these are graspers. A lot of the parts also have some functional value besides their primary one. So that's a grasper as well as having a little bit of a weapon ability. But it's primarily grasper. This is a 3-jointed leg, make it a little bit smaller. These are feet. So basically I've taken my little swimmy guy. I can also scale the parts as I put them on. So I've taken my little swimmy guy and basically pulled his fins off, which is going to mean he's not going to swim too well now. I'll put, let's see, another leg there. So this guy is going to be a tripod guy. So the player can build like really unusual characters in here. The system will analyze what they built and then kind of bring it to life all procedurally. So we'll bring this guy back into the game. And because he lost his fins, he doesn't really swim too well now. So I'm going to actually have him kind of leave the ocean here. Now, the walking you see here is all procedurally generated based upon an analysis of the skeleton that you created. And in fact, every verb in the game is as well. And once again, the world you're seeing here is procedurally generated. Other creatures coming from other players. Like the other levels, this guy has to kind of survive. This guy's a carnivore, so I'm going to have him eat and have him come in and attack this guy. Now, the way he's fighting is based upon where I put his weapon, which is on his tail. So you can see, if I'm not close enough, it won't hit. So I basically have to chase. Luckily, I'm faster than this guy. Oh, there we go. Get off my head. Yeah. Okay, so we killed this little guy. Now we can actually start eating him. Now, one of the cool things about procedural verbs is that they can be cleanly mixed. For instance, I can tell this guy to take a bite out of this guy and then tell him to walk at the same time. And use that to actually invent a new verb, which is to drag. Oh, okay, he's a bad guy. This is where you say, run away. Now, the game actually builds kind of a balanced ecosystem, so you're not always the top of the food chain here. On the other hand, this guy's kind of fast, and maybe he has some amount of stealth, and maybe I can outrun these stupid little hoppy guys, and he'll go eat one of those guys instead. Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, and then we get to the procedural mating. Okay, enough of that silliness. Then we lay an egg, and that gives us access to the editor, where we get to create the next generation of creature. Now, I want to give you a little bit of a sense for how open-ended this really is. I'm going to load a few creatures that we've created in the editor, just to give you a sense for how creative the player can be with this. This guy, I call him Buttface, but you'll notice he has a rather non-standard leg configuration. But still, he moves very smoothly, very realistic, very lifelike. One little kind of subtle trick we're playing with here is that people have never seen Buttface before, so they don't know how he's supposed to move, as opposed to humans. Here's another one. Now, all the ones I'm showing you here are actually running the exact same script. This guy's got kind of a large head. I call him Tweety Bird. He's kind of like an SUV, or this is the Ford Explorer, like whoa. I suspect he would have low fitness in the world. Let's see, this guy I call Hangdog. He's very cool. He kind of walks cool too. But again, basically the same code running on all these things that analyze what the player's done and then kind of animates them, brings them to life. There's also a whole procedural texturing step that we don't have to get into this. Like, I can't show you right now, but the ones in the world you saw that were procedurally textured. This guy I call Dilemma. So the function of these guys is a combination of the parts that you choose for them and also kind of the topological structure that you set up. So this guy just happens to have a very fast walking gait. And it's a property of kind of the way the procedural animation deals with that skeleton. So a lot of the kind of performance of these guys is going to be emergent, from the system. And of course, I insisted to the team that we had to do a Care Bear. So here's our Care Bear. I'm going to make him a really mean carnivore, Now, at this level, the game actually mutates from kind of a first-person eater to an RTS. Now we're controlling a whole little herd of these guys. Now, one thing that I talked about landmarks last time in my talk last year, and I'm going to show you just a few of the landmarks for me in the design. One landmark is I've always been fascinated with the idea of monkeys with guns. And I don't know why, but just what happens when you give monkeys guns, there's something cool about that. So at this level, rather than, the creature is now set. You've evolved the creature. But at this level, I can buy them tools. And in this case, I'm shopping for tools, and I'll talk about the shopping a little bit later. In this case, I'll buy them a spear rack. They get excited. We're seeing kind of more elaborate procedural verbs at this point. They'll kind of have a response. decide what they want to do with it. I'm going to try now, before they get into trouble, I'm going to buy them a campfire here. These guys are still a bit excitable. But I'm actually dealing with the social dynamics at this point. Depending on how they play them, they can become very emotional or very logical at this level of the game. Let me buy them a drum. Now, I bought them a drum, and now these guys have decided to start playing the drum. This is actually a procedural dance, based upon my creature. So at this level of the game, you're playing it kind of like Populous or something. I'm buying them tools. It's influencing what they can do. I can control groups of them now, sending them out on like hunting parties. And I'm, in fact, competing with other tribes. At this level, the ladder that I'm climbing is I'm really upgrading their hut. And so I'm going to buy them a better hut here, which will allow me to buy them better tools and also allow my tribe to grow. And I'm competing with other tribes for members. They have to do with food and stuff like that. Now, they're just basically living in this little corner of the world. I'm going to skip ahead a bit here. As I upgrade the hut here, eventually I upgrade it to the next level, which brings me to yet the next game, which is the city game. Now, at this level, we're basically playing a very, very simple version of SimCity. I can, decide what buildings to make them. I build roads. They have needs. And basically, I'm trying to keep them happy in their little city. And again, I have complete creative control over everything you see here. So I am, the player is the author of this little world. Now, like the tribal mode, we have a shopping thing here. Now, the shopping is populated actually, again, with other players' content. So if I don't feel like building something, and I see something really cool that another player's made, it'll try to learn the style that I'm using and try to populate my shopping catalog with things in that style. And then I can pick them here and then buy it. Or, if I see something I want to modify or I want to build something from scratch, I can actually go into the building editor. And we're trying to make all the editors in the game feel very, very similar. This is using similar kind of morph block stuff. Basically everything in here has like a handle, and I can kind of play around with it, shape it, like these little. We have categories, from very platonic solids that have certain handles on them. Now, the building editor is a little bit closer to Legos, really. I can grab an object and I can have it intersect or stack. We're trying to find the simplest possible operators. The average person can very, quickly learn, and this becomes a toy to them. That they really have a lot of time. And we found this a lot in the Sims build mode, by the way. The players would go into that mode. There was a little bit of a learning curve, but they had kind of immediate, feedback, and they got so much creative reward for doing that. That I've been looking at how we fold that experience more and more into the gameplay. Okay, so we basically added this little mushroom thing to our building. We'll go back in the game. There it is over here. So they're happy. They like it. The primary feedback for me in this game is kind of the happiness of my people, and you're dealing with like large-scale kind of social interactions between the characters. As I mentioned before in the tribal game, this is my city, but I'm actually competing, with other cities. If I scroll across the map, I can look for neighbors. So here's another city. Now, this city was created in the exact same editor, just using, slightly different primitives, different texturing, from the procedural texturing. But just to give you a sense of the variety of style that a player can do. So our city was kind of, I would call it maybe Dr. Seuss style. This is more kind of techno-industrial Star Wars style. At some point, once you upgrade your city enough, you get the ability to start building vehicles. This is how the cities actually interact. At the tribal, you're actually sending people from tribe to tribe and doing raids or, trading. Having, you can have kind of good or bad relationships with the neighboring tribes. At the city level, we basically have kind of three ways to capture or ally with another city. They're basically military, economic, or cultural, depending on kind of the cultural flavor of my people. So they don't look very friendly, and they're heading our way. So we can open our vehicle editor, which works very much like the building editor. There's a shopping alternative populated with items that other players have created. And I'm just going to buy something here. Like that, we have parts categories. These have functional meaning. So propellers, can help the thing fly. Certain things enable it to go into water or go on land. But I'm just going to go ahead and go for this goofy-looking thing. This is kind of more of a Nazca-looking. And there they go. Go God knows where. They're a little goofy. Yeah, go to that city. Go. No, not that way. Oh. Okay, so they're peaceful cowards, so it's hopeless. I don't know. In the meantime, these guys are, not looking real friendly. So this is kind of militaristic, but there are more peaceful avenues to kind of capturing cities. At this point in the game, we're actually kind of entering the what I call the civilization game. And this is a very simple version of a game like Civ or Risk. As we pull back now, for the first time, you can see the entire world, other cities. Now, one little trick you might notice here is that as I pull away from a city, it actually gets very exaggerated. This is both for aesthetic and functional reasons. Like, as I pull into the city, notice how it pops to a realistic scale, but as I pull out, it actually becomes an icon. That indicates actually the level of micromanagement. At this level, the city is one big button, and it has a very simple menu. If I want to go in and actually go in and still modify the cities, I'm still building Paris while they're attacking it, I can still zoom in and click the individual buildings and bring them into the editor and stuff. So basically, you play this game, the Civ, game, and slowly conquer the world, city by city, continent by continent, until pretty much you have owned this entire little world and built it on the way. And at this point, I can now buy what we call the UFO. And I'm just going to buy a stock one. I could have brought this in the vehicle editor as well. Now, this basically becomes your Swiss Army knife at this point. This becomes the representation of all your kind of tools and abilities in the game. This guy is very fast, very mobile. He can go anywhere on the planet in no time at all. Now, there was another landmark that really kind of inspired me at this level. Just a little short side story here. There was this show I used to watch as a kid all the time. It was called The Mutual of Omaha's Wildlife Kingdom. How many of you saw that show? Oh, yeah. So it had Marlon Perkins and this other dude, I forgot his name. But they would go around, every episode was them saving some wild endangered animal, or studying it or something. But what I loved about the show was that every week almost, the way that they chose to solve the problem, their environmental problem, almost always involved a high-powered tranquilizer gun and a helicopter. And so I'd watch the whole show just for the scene at the end where the guy's in the helicopter hanging out, trying to get, going through the herd, nabbing the guy. So that was something that I really wanted with my UFO here. And so the UFO really, one of the things it is, it's a content creation tool. So I can go around looking for something. Let's see. Oh, these are the guys that were beating up on us way back. Now it's time for us to get our revenge. Okay, if I can get over to them. This is a little tricky. Whoa, got him. Yes. So here, this is basically a little abduction beam, and that guy's too fast for me. Oh, I don't want to tank. No way. I can get that guy. Oh, man, they're hard to get. Well, I guess one will do. So I can use this to go around the world sucking up content. And as you might have guessed, I can also use my UFO to kind of go further out, and further out, and further out, and further out, and further out. So here's the local solar system. Few comets, there's our sun. We have hot planets near the sun. This is our home planet that we actually evolved on. And then way out here we have some cold planets. We can click on any planet, kind of go over to it. And we can actually take our UFO there to investigate. These planets really represent like little sandboxes for the player. So as we pull up to this moon, you'll notice geologically it's very different than where we came from, than our home planet. I'm going to come down to the surface here really quick. Now, I'm going to try dropping that guy I just picked up. Can anybody tell me why that happened? If we can bring up the volume a little bit on this machine. Yeah, that's good. So we had a little problem there, and we have no atmosphere. Okay. So what we really want to do is we want to make this world livable. Now, at this level, another one of my kind of landmarks was an old thing called Kid Pigs. How many of you played Kid Pigs? I wanted this to feel like Kid Pigs, basically. What I loved about Kid Pigs is you had all these cool, weird, wacky, creative tools, and they were always out of your control. I mean, you always did these unexpected, oops, I didn't mean to do that type of thing. And I wanted the terraforming to kind of feel like that as well. So I'll pick one of my terraforming tools. And these are things that you earn for the UFO. You're actually increasing your UFO's ability over time, and there are lots and lots of tools and different ladders. So we'll fire a little volcano tool. And so this is actually sculpting the surface of the planet directly. And pumping atmosphere in there. Now, over time, these will actually start developing a thicker and thicker atmosphere on the planet. But in the meantime, I can actually start building colonies here, even while I'm waiting for that. So, pick a spot, zoom in. When I build a colony now, at this point, I get kind of the style that I had on my home world. But it has a bubble over it. This, by the way, is also what I would get if I were to build, at this point, a city underwater. So at this point, this level of technology, I can start colonizing the oceans on my home planet, and they would have bubbles as well. Now, this kind of takes a while. Now, once I terraform the planet, I won't need to build bubble cities, and I can actually build very elaborate kind of colonies that are earning me money to help me upgrade my UFO. That's kind of the real loop going on here. We have a little cheat here. You know, this is at the very high levels of the game. You'll eventually be able to afford the what we call the Genesis device. So this will very rapidly, if you notice the ground texture, you see things are starting to green up a bit. We're getting a little bit of atmosphere. As the storm clouds pull back a bit. So we are actually trying to bootstrap up the atmosphere, and then there's the biosphere score. So once you get a little bit of an atmosphere, you start then bringing in plants, probably that you've harvested from your home planet, and then you can actually start living there. So it's like a kind of a three-way colonization game, terraforming game. But really, we want players to be extremely creative, kind of with what they build here. So let's pull away from this guy. So now it's kind of green. That's a happy little place. Now our guy's there. So everything's good. As I mentioned, the UFO has a lot of different levels that you can advance on, the different tools that you add. One of the more expensive things that you really have to kind of work in here for a while and build some usable colonies, earn a lot of money, but eventually you earn the interstellar drive. And so we pull out again. Now this is our home planet here. We call this the stellar zoo. In fact, we want to have all the real things that you would see in space. One thing that's always really annoyed me about the way astronomy is presented is it's presented as two-dimensional. If you look at star maps like that, I mean, that's the way astronomy is taught. But yet it's this beautifully three-dimensional thing, and you just are not given the sense of what that's like. We have these beautiful images from Hubble, and we're never given any context for how big they are, where they live, how frequent we see them in space. And I really wanted to, at this level, give a player a real sense of what it feels like to be out in the galaxy. So we have things like black holes back here. We have planetary nebula, and this is basically an old supernova shell. These very bright stars are like blue giants, and in fact are going to go supernova fairly soon, so I have to kind of stay away from those. So there's actually a terrain here to this. This is an emissive nebula back here, where new stars are formed. But also at this level, we have a SETI tool. I can roll the mouse over different planets and listen to them. If I'm listening for radio chatter, I'm actually trying to discover other intelligence. Oh, there we go. What is that? There we go. Yeah, it's in an alien language, but I now know that there are aliens living there. So we can go visit that star now. So this is a different system that we're in. Looks like they had a little accident or something here. This is another race. Now this is the point at which I am overtly browsing other players' worlds. Okay, so this entire world was created by another player, and now the computer, it's downloaded to my machine. And I want to emphasize this is asynchronous. It's not a simultaneous multiplayer game. I download it from the other player, and the computer takes over control based upon the personality sliders that the other players kind of set for it when they evolved it. So let's go visit these guys. This is kind of a little hot planet because it's so close to the sun. You can see it has kind of a very different geology. Very arid. Very large sun there. So we have a big city over here. We'll kind of approach slowly. Now, when we're doing first contact with the other species, you have to kind of play this little close encounters musical game with them to try and establish a language. And they may or may not respond well, depending on how you play it. So I'll try that now. Okay. But luckily we have defensive tools as well. So this is Space Invaders. My weapons are seeming a little ineffectual against them. But as I mentioned, all of our tools in the UFO come in many different flavors. So. So there go our friends, and there goes my reputation as a non-violent game developer.
In the final shipping version, you will actually emerge from the primordial soup as a sort of a slug. And the reason we want to do that is because we want to basically give you a blank canvas to start the game. So you'll be looking at this sort of, a simple creature and thinking, you know what, I really don't want to be a slug. I want to be a dragon, or I want to be a six-headed hydra, or, anything you can possibly imagine. One of the cool things you can see here immediately is that all of the flora and all of the creatures that you see are actually made by other players. All of the content in Spore is pulled down from other players and put into your world to always create a fresh and new experience every time you play. So that obviously means in this instance these were made by the development team, because we're the only people playing it right now. But so there's sort of a zebra sort of hybrid thing here, and there's a creature Will made, which could have got nice rubbery legs. There's sort of a cute pink sort of hedgehoggy creature in here. In these woods, there's sort of like a sort of a reptile over there. Let's go and take control of our hero. So a creature game like Cell Game is an avatar-based game, and what I mean by that is you directly control your creature. You have a personal creature that is you. You can control the guy with the mouse or with the WASD keys. And the reason for that is we really wanted the game to be accessible. We wanted anyone to be able to play the game and be a success without having to learn complicated controls or figure it out. So if you're a Sims player and you're used to everything working on the left mouse button, you can still do that. You can click on the ground, or you could click on these guys, or you click on friends, or other features in the world, and the game will help you out. It'll say, well, this guy's an enemy, you're going to need to beat him up, or this thing is food, you should go and eat it. But if you're a WoW player or a hardcore player, you can go WSD and the camera switches over and you can set that pitch wherever you like, wherever you feel good, and it works just pretty much like any other PC action game. If I go over here, you also see something else. When I said before that all of these creatures actually come from a central server, I'm not just talking about their physical characteristics, it's also true of their personality. So if you make a guy that looks like that with an aggressive mouth and a big club on his tail, he's going to act like a mean character in the game as well. He's going to protect his eggs if I wander over there. So let's go a different way. Go into the forest and attack some of these tiny pink things. They don't look too bad. So we go here, we start thumping on them. These look like social creatures. They're small, they're pink, they're in a really large herd. So they're probably all going to start, defending their mate now that I've killed him. Oh yeah. I'll quickly grab a snack while I'm waiting. Something you'll notice here is that there is a very light motive game running through Creature, so you do need to survive. If you're a carnivore, you need to find meat. If you're a herbivore, you need to find fruit. If you're an omnivore, you can do both, but less efficient. You also probably noticed there was a little DNA helix that appeared above the creature's head when I killed that guy. What there was DNA points, which is the currency in Creature game. The DNA points is what I spend in the editor to make my creature, or to change my creature. So now that I've got some points, let's call out and see if anyone's interested in love. Here we go. This is a sped up version of the mating ritual that will eventually ship, so it's kind of combining the nest building, the mating and the egg laying all in one moment, so that it demos a little faster. But eventually, issues like where to build the nest are a relevant question, because this is a really bad spot to build the nest. Like if you look around, it's pretty open, there's plenty of other animals around, and eggs are basically snacks for carnivores. So as soon as I've laid eggs, anything within 200 miles, if it's this obvious, will come and attack it. And sure enough, here's some guys. Get away from my eggs. This is pretty cool. All of the other creatures in my species know that these eggs belong to us, and they'll actually help me out and scare creatures away, and that's pretty cool. Once they're ready to hatch, you can go into the editor, which is one of the core tenets of Spore, player creativity. A lot of the reporting I've seen recently has sort of been seeming to say that there are these editors on the side, and there's this massive game at its heart. But really, to us, making things is half the game. It is actually gameplay. Building these creatures is gameplay. And one of the interesting things about that is when you say, okay, we're going to make you creative as a player, what actually happens is we better not make the things you make look stupid, So if you're going to say be creative, you want to make cool things, and you want it to be easy to make cool things, and you also want the tool to be easy to use. And the guys have done a great job, I think, because at the moment, if you want to get rid of a leg, it's as simple as grabbing it and throwing it away. If you say these spikes don't really work for me anymore, you can just grab them and throw them away. If you want to change the spine, you simply grab it, retract, and then say, I'll draw the shape that I want the spine to be. If you want something to be larger, you just scale it with the mouse wheel. If you want to replace something, you can just stomp it. And there's about 400 parts in the editor, base parts, which is really a big number to start with, but they all have different morph channels. And all these morph channels mean that there's actually virtually an infinite amount of content you can get in there, because you can put these parts wherever you like, you can scale them, move them, rotate them, morph them all over the place. One other cool thing is, lots of games make the player feel stupid. They basically say, here's the right way to play it, and if you don't do it exactly this way, we're going to put up a big game over screen and kick you out. Spore is trying to say, no, the player should always be, the player should always feel like they're smart, So anything that you do, we're going to support. So if you say, you know what, my creature has one giant eye, and he has a mouth on his butt, then we're going to say that's perfectly fine. This creature is valid, just like the last creature you made. This creature is valid. He can still eat, he can still call out to his friends and still do all the things you saw the last creature do. He just looks like you want him to look. The texturing is the same. We're trying to make you feel smart. If you say, I want to change that yellow to a blue, you don't want it to be a flat blue, you know what I mean? So we give you the blue you asked for, but we make sure that it looks cool. There's actually a gradient of blue that surrounds that. There's actually a bit of depth to it. The artists have done a great job there. When you take that back into the game, I'll skip the baby part, blinding white light. And here you can see, it knows, the little head knows it's the head, and so I can move that and it will track my mouse cursor. It knows the head is where the mouth is, and if I tell it to call, you see everything still works. And the gait itself, even the legs, now with these two funky legs, he's still getting about. The other thing that earning DNA points does is it upgrades your brain. So the more points you earn, this little bar fills up that surrounds the brain icon there. Each time it fills up once, you upgrade. Your creature gets smarter, and you get another row of parts in the editor to play with. And when you upgrade 4 times, you can go to Tribe Game. We skip through Tribe Game quickly because we won't get straight to space. But Tribe Game basically transforms the game into a simplified RTS. So it's a real-time strategy game where you're group selecting members of your tribe and sending them out to harvest resources. And you're spending those resources on tools for your tribe. So you might invent a fire pit or a spear rack. And what it's really doing is it's not so much StarCraft as telling the story of your creature becoming a sedentary creature. They're settling down, they're working as a group now, they're not so much a solo animal. Of course, everything is still customizable. You can still build the hut, you can make it look like anything you want. You can redo all of the flora in the world, you can grab any plant and build it any way you like. In City Game, it's a simplified version of SimCity. So basically you're placing buildings and placing farms around and trying to balance the happiness of your populace so that the population increases. Again, everything is customizable. All of these buildings, all these editors are as deep as the creature editor which you saw previously. So you can make the buildings you like, you can make the vehicles, air, land and sea, any way you like. And again, the game will figure out how to make these things animate. Don't worry about, you make something you think looks cool, we'll make it work for you. In Civilization Game, which comes after City, you're basically trying to conquer the globe. So all of these other cities have started to spring up over the globe, and you're basically trying to take them over culturally, diplomatically, or militarily. And so if you come across a little town like this, you have to look at it and figure out what is the appropriate strategy. Another cool thing is that all of these buildings are pollinated as well. So in other words, they're all been created by other players and then placed in your game based on rule sets that we've designed. Another really cool feature is that the first building sort of dictates the style of the city. So we have an aesthetic matching system which looks through the database and basically says all these other buildings look like the first one, so we should put them in the in the city. So the cities have kind of like an architectural style that's unified, which I think is really cool. If we zoom over here to see our city, we see we can buy a UFO and transition to Space Game. Space Game, I get control of my vehicle back again, so it's a lot like Creature Game where I can drive around the world using the mouse control or the WASD keys. Another really cool feature of Spore that I don't think going through the demo this fast communicates is that every level increases your ability to zoom out, So now that you're in space, for the first time ever, you can zoom all the way out and see your entire, one side of your planet. And the really cool thing to remember is, by this stage, you made most of the things that are on that planet. You made the buildings, you made the vehicles, you made your UFO, you made the creatures. So this really does feel like your home planet, Other games say, oh, this is your home planet, it's part of a cutscene and you've never seen it before in your life. But in Spore, by this stage, you finally see your home planet and it really is something that you made. You'll also say, oh, that's where I crawled out of the primordial soup, and that's where I built my first heart, and that's where I fought that great battle, and all that sort of stuff, And if we zoom further out, you can get the solar system view. And here, you can start to see the other planets and objects that are circling your sun. So let's zoom in and see what that is. It looks a bit like a barren rock. Let's not go there. And here you start to see all of the other cool planet scripts that we have. They have different colored oceans and different climates and weird effects and different land formations and of course different creatures. Let's find some creatures. There's one. Space is more of an open-ended game, so now that you've hit here, there's really no end to it, and a lot of it is about seeing new content, exploring new worlds, and also fooling around with the content that you find on these worlds. So each one of these icons represents kind of like a bucket of tools. Here you've got some, combat tools, so you can say, I'm going to laser that poor creature. Or you could say, I'm going to shoot them. But over here you might say, oh, you know what, actually, that's a really cool creature. I'm going to take him back to my home planet, and set him down there and see what happens. Or I could drop him. Or I could throw him. And that barren planet you saw earlier, if you wanted to and you had the resources, you could actually terraform it. You have a whole suite of terraforming tools. You can raise and lower the terrain, raise and lower the water. Or if the planet doesn't have any water, you can bring water to it by grabbing ice comets and basically slamming them down into the planet's surface. This is a good thing to do on a barren, rocky world. It's a foolish thing to do on a world like this, where it's already full of water. So I basically drowned the planet. And if we pull back. Probably the last thing that I want to talk about today is if you pull back and get to the galaxy view, you finally start to get a handle on the scope of the game. Each one of these dots is a star, and each one of these stars has 2 to 10 planets circling it. And each one of those planets has content that has been pulled from other people's games. You know, there could be tribes or cities or civilizations that you've never seen before. And if you're online, the amount of content you get in Spore is virtually limitless. So as long as one other person in the world is playing a game of Spore, there is new content in your game to find. And you can of course manage that content and sort that content. So you could say, I only want content from my best friend, you know, or I don't want content from this person who makes terrible creatures, or, you know, or you could even go through and hand pick through all of the content that's ever been made by people in Spore and then prioritize that in a list. So you can completely manage all of the content in the game. And then if we pull all the way out, oh, someone's contacting me. If we pull all the way out, you can finally see the entire universe. We don't know what's out here. And that's an overview of Spore.